afternoon and welcome. I'm Jane Boyer, the Vice President of the Scripps Fine Arts Foundation. Welcome to the Fall Luncheon and Art Presentation. We're really glad to be together on this beautiful day to share friendship and art. The purpose of the Scripps Fine Arts Foundation is to stimulate public interest in art, to develop greater opportunities for the study of art, and to benefit the local art community. Membership in the Scripps Fine Arts Foundation is open to anyone who is in sympathy with that purpose. Again, we're really glad to have you all here today. Thanks for coming. Board member Charlie Tuggle will introduce our speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this lecture today. My wife, Catherine, was supposed to do this introduction. So the question is how to handle certain parts of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak in her voice. So what I want you to do is I want you to think of somebody who's about this high and, has really long hair. So if you would, let me just, because I think it really sounds better in her voice than if I modify it. It is my pleasure to introduce Stephanie Soldner, daughter of longtime Scripps College ceramics teacher Paul Soldner. The Soldner family spent summers in Aspen and winters in Claremont, where Paul led the Scripps ceramics department for 30 years. In these two places, Stephanie developed a sense of place and a deep respect and appreciation for the artists and creative thinkers who nourished her love for the arts and lively exchange of ideas. Here's the part where voice changes. I've probably known Stephanie for 60 years. I met Stephanie last night. We were among faculty brats running around Seal Court during many art openings. I even recall the night Paul roasted a pig in a Raku kiln. They're starting to roast pigs now at parties, but back then that was a big deal. And I met Stephanie again in the early 70s. We were both students in Lois Langland's Psychology of Creativity class at Scripps. After Stephanie graduated from Pomona College in 1974 and had a career in retail management, she became business manager for her father for several years. In 1995, her mother Jenny passed away, and Stephanie became the vice president of Soldner Pottery Equipment, overseeing the business until it was sold in 2008. Since 2011, following the death of her father, and with the encouragement of many in the art world and local community, she has taken on the task of preserving her family's home and legacy. I'm eager to hear how Stephanie formed the Soldner Center for the Arts and Innovation, which was granted nonprofit status by the IRS in 2021. The Soldner property is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places and is a member of the National Trust Historic Artists' Homes and Studios. So welcome, Stephanie. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. This is remarkable to look out into this room and see so many friends, both my friends as well as Paul and Ginny's friends. It's good to see all of you. As you know, and because Catherine basically just gave my talk, but a few more details to follow. But yeah, Paul and Ginny spent many, many winters here as Paul taught for 30 years at Scripps College. And they really led a vibrant and creative life here. They look forward to returning here to their home here in Claremont every winter. And they really looked forward to the welcoming community of artists and creative friends. So it's really lovely to be back and be here kind of in their stead And in fact, as I arrived, I drove here from Colorado, and I got here, I left 10 inches of snow and 7 degrees. So being here is a treat, but it also really reminded me of the fact that when my folks came, this is where they got another breath of fresh air, and they could really continue to create in a way that doesn't happen in Aspen in the snow because everything becomes so constricted. I could really feel their joy of being here as I arrived, and that's really been really nice. I want to say thank you especially to Scripps College for hosting this, to the Claremont Lewis Museum of Art for inviting me, and of course Catherine, bless her heart, and Charlie. Thank you also for inviting me and having me here. I'm here to talk about my parents, Paul and Ginny Soldner's home and studio, entitled Honoring the Past, Creating the Future. So here we go. While preparing for this presentation, I researched the word legacy and found this wonderful quote. Legacy is about learning from the past, living in the present, and building for the future. This presentation is really about Paul and Ginny Soldner's life, legacy, and the future of the Soldner Center. So I'll begin by honoring the past, telling you about my parents, Paul and Ginny's early influential personal histories, then their story together, building their 5 remarkable spaces that comprise their home and studio in Aspen, Colorado, followed by their artistic interests and contributions, and then I'll finish by sharing what I'm doing today to create the future of the Soldner Center. So, honoring the past. My father, Paul Soldner, was an innovator, an educator, an instigator, and a well-known ceramic artist. His contributions to the ceramic art world are considered significant and historic. His artwork is in museums and private collections throughout the world. His way of life is legendary, and he had a unique vision, and he was an inspiration to others. My parents, Paul and Ginny Soldner, both came from Bluffton, Ohio, where Paul's father was a Mennonite minister in the church that Ginny's family attended. And this photo, is of Paul and his sister Helen and his parents, their parents, Grover and Beulah. Although pre-med at Bluffton College, Paul was interested in the arts early on, especially photography. During World War II, because he was a Mennonite and a conscientious objector, and because he had been pre-med, the Army made him a medic, and he served in Patton's Third Army in the Battle of the Bulge. This is something that a lot of people don't know about Paul. His division liberated Mauthausen concentration camp near Linz, Austria, on May 5th, which was 2 days before the end of the war in 1945. And he felt compelled to photograph and document these atrocities. My father began to question whether he wanted to be a doctor and responsible for other people's lives. While helping to care for the prisoners at Mauthausen, Paul found very powerful charcoal drawings on the walls inside of one of the barracks. He was so moved that someone would try to create in such dire circumstances, it changed his life. And he decided to devote his life to the arts. In 2020, during COVID, the Austrian parliament asked if they could use this photograph that Paul had taken to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of the war. It's one of the few photographs showing surviving prisoners leaving a concentration camp. I was glad to give them permission, and the image was seen everywhere in Austria, including on social media. Amazingly, I saw a post on Facebook, and under the image, in German, I could translate, and when I hit translate, the name of the artist who had made the charcoal drawings in the barracks, his name was there, and it changed the course of Paul's life. His name was Edmund Garrigan, and he survived the war. he went on to publish a book of drawings. This is what the book looks like, from Mauthausen. I was fortunate to find a copy, and it's in our archives. Edmund died in 2003, and Paul died in 2011. And sometimes I imagine what it would have been like if the two of them could have met, and what a conversation it would have been. I was a senior in high school before I ever even heard about Mauthausen. And he and I talked about it many times after that. And before he passed away, he and I agreed that I would donate the original photographs to the Mauthausen Museum, but we did keep copies for our own records. And if you're ever in Austria, I highly recommend that you go to Mauthausen. It is astonishing. It was a labor death camp, and it was a quarry where prisoners were required to carry 80-pound blocks of granite up 180 steps. And needless to say, as you saw in the pictures, it was brutal. My mother, Ginny, seen on the right in this picture, was a free spirit, eager to leave Bluffton and live life to the fullest. She attended Bluffton College as a liberal arts major, and she and Paul got to know each other after the war, when Ginny and her good friend Louise, who was Paul's younger sister, needed a chaperone, and Paul gladly came along. So my parents were married on the Bluffton College campus in 1948. In the early 1950s, while pursuing a master's degree at the University of Colorado in art administration, Paul discovered his passion for ceramics. During weekends exploring Colorado, my parents found a place that inspired them in Aspen, Colorado. And so in 1956, my parents purchased 5 acres, 2 miles outside of Aspen, with the dream to hand build their home and studio. Over the course of more than 40 years, Paul and Ginny followed their dream to hand build and shape their personal creative environment. Today, there's a strong interest and admiration locally and nationally for the buildings and the landscape that they created, which comprised their home and studio. From 1957 to 1965, our family camped for 8 summers on the property. And they built what they had money for and time to finish. And in this picture, our tent is on the right, the outhouse is in the middle, and a cement mixer is on the left. Friends would sometimes feel sorry for us and would bring freshly caught trout or offer us showers at their home in town, and we all loved it. And this is me with our neighbor's dog. So, first things first. Ginny is seen here guiding a concrete pour for the first structure on the property, our septic tank. Just do it this way. Paul had strong design and construction principles. For example, he wanted to use natural and local materials as much as possible, such as concrete, rock, and wood. He hand-built forms for the slip-cast walls on the studio. He gathered rocks from the property on a sled that was attached to the back of our Studebaker, and he would place those on the sled, bring them up, and then place those rocks in the slip-cast and rubble walls. And he used simple techniques, like this string and rock as a plumb line. He wanted to let the materials develop a natural patina and avoid paint as much as possible. And he designed the buildings to fit into the natural landscape. The shape of the studio echoes the surrounding mountains in this picture. Paul was innovative and appreciated simple concepts and used them while building the studio. An example is, how did he know where to stop on the second wall after the first wall was built without using any kind of technology that you would use today? Any ideas? Anybody? Curious? Yep. Good job. You get points. Yes, he used a garden hose. Water always finds its own level, and he knew that. And so he had my mom stand on a ladder at the top of the first wall, holding a garden hose full of water, and then he stood on a ladder in front of the second wall. And when the water was the same height on the second wall as the first, he knew he could mark that, and it would be exactly level. And subsequently, it has been measured digitally, and yes, they're completely level. Yep. He cast concrete beams on the ground. And a local friend and sculptor who owned the only crane in town was more than happy to place the beams for the studio. And Paul intentionally used non-combustible materials as much as possible. In 1964, the studio was complete. Today, this is the studio, now called the Orange Door Building. Over time, my parents named all of the buildings by their color or shape because they wanted the spaces to be able to change depending on use or need. Now used as a living space, in the future, this may become a space for public events. Paul decided there would be no internal structural walls of any of the buildings. And here you see the beams that Paul had poured. He intentionally used salvaged materials such as metal from the side of a truck for the fireplace. And he used burned wood to give a unifying color and texture throughout, and it's known in Japanese as shoyu shugiban. This is the Orange Door Building during winter, snuggled amongst the trees that they had planted and nurtured. And this is what it looked like last week. In 1959, the A-frame building was begun, also using cast concrete beams that my father called the bones. Here he is atop a tall, rickety wooden ladder, using the engine of his car for power to weld the metal supports for the solid 35-foot fir beams he ordered from Oregon. It took me a long time to realize that that's what this picture was about, but as I looked at it closely, realized that I can, in fact, see the cord coming down with the car engine open. It was astonishing. The skeleton of the A-frame weathered one winter before Paul added the roof. Paul was a visionary, and in the 1950s, he designed the shape of the A-frame to incorporate solar in-floor radiant heat for both buildings. He was perhaps the first in Colorado to use solar energy. Because solar technology was so new, unfortunately, Paul didn't know how close to place the galvanized pipe that he used in the floors, and the system was never quite as warm as he had envisioned. And unfortunately, the galvanized pipe eventually rusted closed. So today we have an electric hot water baseboard for heat, but we do hope to expand the use of solar energy again in the future. In the living room, you can see part of the concrete bones and the roof made from hundreds of 2x4s laid on edge, which were salvaged from the local lumber yard. He clamped and hand-nailed these every 12 inches, and his arms went numb over the summer from holding the hammer so tightly. The dining room showcases Paul and Ginny's art collection of influential 20th century ceramic artists who were their friends and colleagues. And the dining room table is by Sam Malouf, acquired when Paul and Sam traded work. Here you see the A-frame nestled in the snow during the winter, with the Orange Door Building just behind. The round building, begun in 1966, was made out of cinder block and blown concrete. Paul designed a wooden radius, seen here in the background, and when raised one level at a time, defined the shape of the beehive structure. Paul designed the ceiling by dividing the circumference of the building into 6 equal parts. The wood beams bisected each span with 3/4-inch plywood covering the spaces in between, and a skylight topped the final opening. The railing for the second floor loft that you can see at the bottom of this photograph is made from circular rebar that Paul used to manufacture the flywheels for his Soldner kick wheels. When he stopped manufacturing the kick wheels, he had stored these out back, and when he needed a balcony, he simply went out, collected them, and welded them together to make a railing. The upstairs is what he called the flop house, and this is where he would pay students or friends to come and help for a period of time, and he would pay them $200 a week. They got free room and board, and they were expected to work from 8 o'clock in the morning until noon. And then they were free to go do whatever else they wanted to do. They could get a job, they could go hiking, they could make artwork. It was a real win-win situation. He used the round building in his studio for many years, and this is what it looked like as his studio. And here he is working on some of his large sculptures. In 1995, my mother, also an artist, a painter, died, and my father moved out to make a gallery space to exhibit her paintings and celebrate her life. After my father died, I added the ceramic sculptures of his, and their artwork is now displayed together. And it feels as though they're still in conversation to me. They loved living life to the fullest, and part of this was creating in-ground hot tubs. Paul designed and built over 20 in his lifetime, and this one's tucked among carefully placed boulders. This was his second. Each morning, my parents looked forward to enjoying tea or coffee while soaking in the hot tub, even in the winter. And just visible in the background is the roof of Paul's third studio. Paul took over the space he had used for packing and shipping his artwork and made it his final studio. In the middle of this photograph are fiberboard figure cutouts that Paul had made to press into his ceramics. And in the foreground are 2 Soldner electric potter's wheels, part of the Soldner potter equipment. A professional model is on the left and a studio model is on the right. And we have left his studio as it was because it is part of HOS, Historic Artist Homes and Studios. He also designed Soldner clay mixer, which are used in many ceramic departments in colleges and universities and by professional ceramic artists around the country. He held 7 patents for his designs, and all of the equipment is still manufactured and sold today. The clay mixers are sold out of Oklahoma City, and the wheels are sold out of Fort Collins, Colorado. In keeping with living life to the fullest, Paul loved to make fruit wine to share with his friends, students, colleagues, and he would make things such as dandelion, rhubarb, chokecherry, sarvisberry, and many others. He didn't make grape wine because there are already great grape wines, so he wanted to make fruit wine. So he began his wine cellar in 1975. Fittingly, the wine cellar is made from a large rotary lime dehydrating kiln used to make cement for concrete, which he acquired from a nearby company that had gone bankrupt, and a catenary arch kiln that he had deconstructed and moved and reconstructed was used as the passageway. Paul loved the catenary arch. It was used by the Romans for its strength. They used it for many of their buildings, and it's in many, many places on our property. When completed, the wine cellar was covered entirely with earth to help maintain the correct temperature for the wine and blend in with the landscape. And the entrance was built using salvaged metal and concrete blocks that he made, and then boulders found on the property. Seen here on their 45th wedding anniversary, Paul and Ginny were partners in every way. Ginny loved her life, helping to build their home and studio together. She was a poet as well as an artist in her own right. She earned a Master of Fine Arts from Claremont Graduate School, now university, and this is her studio at CGS. Later, she had a studio near Laverne, California, in an orange packing warehouse that had been converted into artist studios. Her abstract paintings were often on large canvases, and each of the following that I'll show you are over 6 feet. Ginny said about her work, and I quote, "I see a correlation between art and life. Every painting, though complete in itself, can also be seen as metaphysical. Each person's life is many-layered and continuously evolving. We are not made of matter that can be considered set in a specific state. We are emanations of energy. Our thoughts, emotions, action, and relationship with others creates constantly changing design of color, lights, and sounds, a dazzling kaleidoscope of shifting energies. The vibrations of this energy are called life force. The structure and the content of these paintings evolves during the process of being created. I overlap, interlock, and intersperse color, shape, and space. Fluidity and activity is played out over the entire canvas, giving an ambiguity of background versus foreground, end quote. This final painting was from Ginny's MFA announcement in 1986. Ginny was warm and easy to talk with and enjoyed welcoming guests from around the world. Here she's seen speaking with Takashi Nagasato, discussing bowls that we had in our collection that were made by the multi-generational Nagasato family in Japan. And Takashi goes to Anderson Ranch every year, so there's a long tradition coming to our house as well. As vice president, Ginny ran Soldner pottery equipment, working with dealers, orders, billing, and helping to create the iconic Soldner pottery equipment ads, such as this one featuring Beatrice Wood. Ginny also taught second and third graders at Oakmont Elementary School in Claremont until moving to Aspen. She had helped to support our family as an elementary school teacher while Paul was in graduate school at Los Angeles County Art Institute, also known as Otis Art Institute. In 1956, Paul received his Master of Fine Arts from Otis. He was the first to create works on a monumental scale using a technique he developed called continuous throwing. The shapes were free form, and his surface designs were influenced by the abstract expressionist movement. He's shown in this famous photograph standing on the left in his MFA show at Otis with Peter Voulkos, his teacher, seated, and John Mason, a fellow student and dear friend, on the right. And this was also known as the California Clay Revolution, the beginning of it. Some of his sculptures were over 8 feet tall, and clearly he couldn't fire this, but he was very proud of it. Early on, Paul dreamed of making a difference in the field of ceramics, and this quote from Ceramics Monthly in 1960 is prescient. "It is my hope that through searching in hundreds of experiments that I should find a small contribution to the history of ceramics, an idea in clay never before expressed." In 1957, Paul began teaching at Scripps College, and it was there that he innovated the groundbreaking firing technique called American Raku. The following photos show Paul firing American Raku, taken at Scripps sometime between 1962 and 64. As he told the story, the serendipitous event happened during a Scripps Lively Arts Festival in 1961 or 62. After reading Bernard Leach's A Potter's Book about a Japanese tea ceremony that quickly fired and then cooled tea bowls to be used for the ceremony, Paul decided to try to duplicate the event. But he misunderstood Leach's description, and after racing through the onlooking crowd, yelling, hot pots," to quickly cool the red hot bowl in the nearby Scripps seal pond, the results were disappointing. On a hunch, however, the next day, he put another red hot bowl into a pile of pepper tree leaves that lay nearby. Of course, they burst into flames, and Paul covered the flames with a bucket, and when the smoke had ceased, he lifted the bucket and was astonished and delighted at the result. The dream to innovate led him to explore and develop a new branch of contemporary ceramic art that is now utilized and enjoyed by ceramic artists around the world. This final photograph shows Paul firing a tea set that was given as a gift to a retiring Scripps faculty member. And it's now in the Scripps College collection. This is also an iconic American Raku piece that is in the Scripps College collection. I'd like to clarify here that traditional Japanese raku never uses post-fire smoking in its technique. Instead, its tea bowls are cooled quickly in the open air. So American Raku is known for its rich surfaces produced by smoking the ware outside the kiln at the end of the firing, which, like Paul, embraces spontaneity and the serendipity. The word raku in Japanese means ease, enjoyment, or comfort, and Paul embraced this idea, and he expanded it to include his philosophy, which sums up his life and legacy in many ways. There can be no fear of losing what was once planned. There must be an urge to grow along with the discovery of the unknown. Make no demands, expect nothing, follow no absolute plan, be secure in change, learn to expect another solution, and finally, prefer to gamble on your own intuition. Paul was an educator at heart. He taught at Scripps College and Claremont Graduate University for over 30 years and conducted numerous ceramic workshops around the world. He encouraged his students not to be afraid to take risks with their artwork, and he was famous for saying, "Try it." As an example, he graded his undergraduate students at Scripps based on weight rather than on quality. He would raise the weight and the technical difficulty each semester, but he didn't want to decide what was good or bad. He wanted to encourage his students to simply make work. If a piece blew up in the kiln, they would discuss what had happened, and when Paul was satisfied that the student understood what had happened, he'd say, "Okay, let's go weigh it." He loved to test new ideas and teach concepts like his design for a solar kiln constructed during a conference in Fort Collins, Colorado in 1972. And here they are pouring the plaster mold for the kiln. Unfortunately, it failed because they discovered the size of the disc, shown here coated with mylar, was not large enough to generate the BTUs needed to fire a pot successfully. But Paul was never discouraged by failure, and he liked to have fun. And so, to demonstrate that the concept of the power of solar energy was truly solid, he passed out 51-foot square mirrors to the participants and had them focus the mirrors on a pile of cardboard at the center. It quickly burst into flames, everyone cheered, and he proved his point. He also confirmed the story of Archimedes' soldiers burning ships with their shields. Expanding on his love of teaching, in 1966, he found Anderson Ranch Art Center in Snowmass, Colorado, which is located 9 miles from Aspen. Today, the ranch offers workshops and classes with top professionals in their fields of ceramics, sculpture, woodworking, painting, printmaking, and photography. Paul brought Sam Malouf to the ranch to teach woodworking, and the woodshop building is named in his honor. Although retired, he enjoyed hanging out with students and guiding their kiln firings. He was still throwing at 86 and in a sarong. He could be goofy, including ads that he and Ginny created for Soldner pottery equipment, such as this one, poking fun at the Harry Potter book series. Or imitating a famous painting while using his Soldner electric wheel as the picnic table. And yes, that's me in the dress. In his spare time, he created and shaped penjing, the Chinese precursor to Japanese bonsai. This one was a wisteria. Yeah. And this is a cork oak seen in the backyard in their Claremont home on Baseline. These and 8 others are now in the collection of the Huntington Museum and Gardens in Pasadena, California. And if you call a week ahead, you can request to see them. And it is quite an experience. And I encourage you to do that if you're in the area. Paul was constantly creating, even jewelry. He gave these pieces to Ginny for her birthday, their anniversary, or Christmas. The following are examples of Paul's artwork held in major museums and collections around the world. This one is an American Raku-fired pedestal piece that's in the Scripps College collection. Entitled Celebration, this is an American Raku-fired piece, and I'm not sure where it's held. This is a pedestal piece. It's a lovely example of yet another firing technique that Paul innovated called low temperature salt fuming. And this is another pedestal piece using low temperature salt fuming that's also in the Scripps College collection. This sculpture was both low temperature salt fumed and then refired. Later in Paul's career, he enjoyed firing with wood to achieve effects such as this one on this sculpture. And at the end of his life, he felt firing with wood was perhaps one of the most environmental way to fire. And I quote, "Although burning wood emits some particulates and carbon dioxide, until we can more effectively harness energy from the sun, grow trees and burn wood. A tree efficiently converts sunlight into hydrocarbons, which are then stored in the wood for years at no loss of energy. And then in addition, the tree takes up carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. The roots control soil erosion. The leaves compost into humus, and the ash remaining after a firing in the kiln is a valuable fertilizer," end quote. In 2008, a book entitled Nothing to Hide, containing Paul's personal exposures, disclosures, and reflections, was published. And unfortunately, currently it's out of print, but we are working to get this republished and even digitized this year. So, creating the future. This is where I am today. Previously, I had been in retail management, my father's business manager for several years, and after my mother passed away, I did manage Soldner pottery equipment until we sold it. I had to consider, when I inherited this property, what I wanted to do with my family's legacy and home. Did I want to live there? Could I take care of it financially and physically? Did I want to take care of it? Should I sell it and move away, or preserve it? For context, our property is the bright green 5-acre triangle in the middle of this photograph, with undeveloped conserved land on either side of us. The edge of Aspen is just visible on the lower right, and on the upper left is the Aspen Airport Business Center. We are fortunate that a large sagebrush-covered hill and open space separates us from nearby development. In 1992, Paul and Ginny created the Soldner Family Limited Liability Limited Partnership for their 5 acres and the buildings in Aspen. In 1995, my mother passed away, and in 2011, my father died. Over the years, ownership was transferred to me, and I was able to keep the property. Although I inherited this property free and clear, there were only limited funds to care for it. I was faced with a financial challenge to support myself and honor my family's legacy. We've always enjoyed wildlife passing through our property, and I decided that I would try to preserve an important wildlife corridor. So in October of 2018, I sold a 2-acre conservation easement on the back of our property, which will provide protection for the wildlife, and it will help give me some of the resources that I need. In 2014, I convened a national council of Paul and Ginny's close friends, and we considered the future. The council envisioned 2 phases, the Soldner Center, and the second phase, the Soldner Center for the Arts and Innovation. Ideas for preservation and use were developed, and a mission statement was created. Our mission is dedicated to the Soldner legacy of transformative experience by fostering curiosity, creativity, and community through integration of the arts, alternative architecture and energy, and the natural world. In 2018, I sold a Colorado tax credit certificate from the sale of the conservation easement. It's a program that happens in Colorado. I don't know if you have one in California, but that enabled me to make more money for necessary financial security. I applied for and received listing in the National Register of Historic Places, and then in 2021 formed a 501c3, the Soldner Center for the Arts and Innovation, and we were welcomed into the National Trust's Historic Artists' Homes and Studios. So phase 1, the Soldner Center begins. In 2022 was the first season we were open by appointment to the public for tours of the buildings, grounds, and art collections. In 2023, this last summer, we added 3 special events that are guided by the interests of Paul and Ginny. And this last summer, we had over 425 visitors. We conduct tours to the public of the buildings and grounds and art collections. We offer insights into Paul and Ginny's design aesthetic, life, and values. We present small events, such as this one in the A-frame living room. This was called Nature Writing, and it was with Heather Swan, who graduated from Scripps College and who had studied with Paul at Scripps. She now teaches environmental literature at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and we were very fortunate to have her. And she is returning this summer for a 3-day symposium in writing, featuring her new book, which is called Where the Grass Still Sings, Stories of Insects and Interconnection. And we will be partnering with Aspen Art Museum and the Aspen Center for Environmental Studies, where we'll be talking about in different ways the interconnection between insects and humans and the people who are trying to care for them. It should be really powerful. Here's the writing workshop having moved to the table in our dining room to continue their writing. Glenn Grishkoff, who some of you may know, also studied with Paul, and he offered a 2-day workshop called Brush Making for Creatives. Seen here are the participants hard at work in the kill yard next to Paul's studio. We hope to have Glenn back in the near future. And here they are, proudly showing all of their amazing brushes that they created. It was wonderful. We also host a community event, such as this one, a lawn concert that was performed by Jan Garrett and J.D. Martin, who were local, well-loved singer-songwriters. It was a beautiful evening. And in the future, because Paul was a veteran, we are exploring hosting a weekend with veterans paired with singer-songwriters who listen to their story and write a song about it together, culminating in an intimate performance for their family and friends. With the success of the Soldner Center, in the future, with the growing interest and support of the public and others, we will work to develop the Soldner Center for the Arts and Innovation. SCAI will offer multidisciplinary residences for emerging or mature professionals in the visual and performing arts, writers, scientists, philosophers, architects, visionaries, and educators. They will be 1 week or longer, and we will partner with local and national organizations as sponsors. We will continue to offer the tours of the buildings and art collections to the public, and we'll use the Soldner property for small events, conferences actually, and also group meetings. We'll host educational gatherings and exchanges and offer an opportunity for scholarly study of the Soldner legacy. We will have to, in the long term, fundraise a minimum of $10 million for 3 modest innovators and residence units, and these will be on the back side of the property. 3 modest units for staff housing, because this is Aspen, Colorado, and it is really difficult to find housing, and we're learning we now have to actually have our housing on site, which I think is a good idea. We'll also have a dining and gathering space, and all of the spaces will be modest and visionary with a goal of net zero and LEED certified. This site plan, if you can see it, shows the innovators and residents in a red semicircle located behind the Soldner buildings in gray. The blank triangle at the bottom is the wildlife conservation easement. Currently, I am the unpaid director of the Soldner Center, and eventually, to move forward, we will also need to fundraise to hire a new director and staff to create the future and nurture the Soldner Center for the Arts and Innovation long term. Sometimes I wonder, in these challenging and rather unsettling times, what is the role of the Soldner Center? How can we contribute to the well-being of others? Does what we do matter? What I always come back to is our mission guided by Paul and Ginny's values, fostering curiosity, creativity, and community. Paul and Ginny had a dream that they began 75 years ago. I would like to end with what we consider the message of the Soldner Center. This quote was on the wall of my mother's art studio. My father loved it, and they truly lived it. It sums up my family's legacy, and this is what we hope people will take away with them when they visit us at the Soldner Center. This is where we are honoring the past and creating the future. It's attributed to Goethe. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Thank you. Thank you. If you're interested in continuing to support us or get involved in any way, please stay in touch. Come and visit us. We'd love to have you join a tour or tell your friends, by all means, if they're in Colorado, to come visit. I do have on the back table, there's a tall white table at the back, what I call the signatures of support. And this is your email address and your signature and your zip code. And it's one way that I will use to send out emails to people to let them know what we're doing at the Soldner Center. It's also where I use this information for grant writing, and if I have presentations in front of the county commissioners and things like that, I also use it. Please feel free to pick up a brochure also on that back table. And of course, donations are always welcome. And then I'll leave this up for our website and address and email. Thank you again. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Yes?
Yeah, was Rick Martinez a student of Soldner?
I don't believe so. He was at Claremont High School.
Right, I took a class there as an adult, a night class in Raku pottery.
Uh-huh.
And it was
I
very-
know he was tremendously influential for a lot of students in high school, many of who went on to become ceramic artists. But to be honest, I don't know if he was actually a student. I think they were friends, but I don't know beyond that. Yeah, yep, yeah.
When he did the 8-foot tall, you said it was a,
Floor pot.
were they pieces or?
No, that's what he did. He invented, so he started with his wheel and, he brought it up to as far as he could with his elbow, and then he let the clay settle a little, firm up a little bit, then he added a ring. And then he started and continued throwing. And then he stood on a step stool and then ultimately on a ladder. And I have pictures of him on a ladder throwing a tall, tall piece.
He's got it on a wheel?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, those were thrown on a wheel.
When you said that, I thought that's what you meant.
That's what I meant. Yeah. Yep. Yes.
Participate by donating any amount because each and every gift really does make a difference, and it's a way to make this vision and this experience and inspiration happen for many years to come. So please give whatever you can or share with friends who might be able to and be interested to support the program.
Thank you, Kirk. And did you say that you're a board member? So thank you. You're being a wonderful board member.
When you want to visit, do you need to have?
You do. You need to go onto our website, the soldnercenter.com, and we're only open, and I should have said this earlier, we're open June, July, and August. There's so much snow, it's too difficult to try to be open in the winter at this point. But if you go onto the Soldner Center website, you can make a reservation. We have tours 6 times a summer for 8 people, $25 a person, and would love to have you. Good. Can't wait. And if you do go, please introduce yourselves so that I have an understanding if I'm giving the tour or not of the connection, because that's always important. Thank you so much for coming and for listening, and I hope to see you in the future.